morning, everybody, and welcome to Manna. Manna, thank you for welcoming us. I'm here with my old friend, Craig Rice. We served together in the General Assembly. He is the CEO of Manna. Steve Carozzi, where did Steve go? Steve is the executive director? The managing director. The warehouse staff is here. All the great volunteers are here. Thank you. We've been watching you work all morning. That's too cool. My friend Mary Anderson from Montgomery County is out here someplace. There's Mary. We're waiting for the county executive to arrive. I've been joined by my dear colleague from Maryland's 6th District, April Delaney, who is the only member of the House Agriculture Committee from the Maryland delegation, so she plays a critical role for us fighting for both our farmers and also for the SNAP program. Look, everybody, we are in now a food crisis in America. We're in a healthcare crisis in America. We're in a government shutdown crisis in America. And a lot of our colleagues have not been coming to work in Washington. They've been on an extended now 6-week vacation, paid vacation, I should say. That is disturbing to us. We are urging all of our colleagues to come back to Washington, to come back to the Capitol. Let's sit down, let's negotiate, let's reopen the government, and let's restore Medicaid to people. Let's restore the ACA tax credits to people so they can pay these skyrocketing insurance premiums that people are receiving on a monthly basis, and so we can make sure that we continue people's SNAP benefits. Now, the SNAP benefits were going to go away on November 1st, but 23 attorneys general, Democratic attorneys general, and several Democratic governors went to court, and we've won 2 different federal district court rulings commanding the Trump administration to spend the emergency reserve funds to make sure that there are no interruptions in SNAP benefits. And we continue to wrangle with the administration about this, which does not want to make sure that those benefits cover all of November. So the wheel is still a bit in spin there, but we have been able to defeat the idea coming from the Trump administration that they don't have to spend the emergency reserve funds on the emergency that we're in. We've got to do that. But even in the best of times, when the SNAP benefits are flowing, we still have tremendous hunger across the country and right here in Montgomery County, which is one of the wealthiest counties in America. But our friends at Manna are meeting that need, and we want to talk about what they're doing and what they're seeing with various groups in our community who depend on Manna to make sure that there's going to be enough food. We've got 680,000 households in the Free State who rely on SNAP benefits to make sure that their families are going to have 3 meals a day. And without the SNAP assistance, which averages around $180 a month, these families would have to be making extremely painful choices at the grocery store, and there would be an even greater burden placed on our friends at Manna and So What Else and Tommy's Pantry and all of the food service not-for-profits across our county and across the state. So we're hanging tough in Congress, we're hanging tough in court. We are working with all of the amazing civil society groups that are insisting that there be food for everybody in America, the wealthiest country that's ever existed, and this is at the wealthiest moment. Our state government partners, our county partners and the county executive and the county council here in Montgomery have been working hard to fill the need. Governor Moores has declared a state of food emergency and given a big boost, and Montgomery County has ponied up an extra $7.75 million in a proposed emergency food aid package. This will enable food banks and nonprofits to feed people in our community. So we've got tremendous resources here in our community. We've got tremendous groups, we've got tremendous volunteer energy, as we can see and hear behind us, but we need to put the government back on a stable footing so we're not lurching from emergency to emergency. So we've gathered people who are critical to the food ecosystem in our community, and I'm going to introduce them to you and ask them to say a few words about what's going on. Heather Raskin, I'm going to start with you. Heather is the director who leads the operational and strategic initiatives of Montgomery County's Office of Food Systems Resilience Team. She has a background in higher education and nearly a decade now working in nonprofit food systems leadership. She's co-chair of the Maryland Food System Resiliency Council and a founding member of Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments Farm Committee. Heather, thanks for everything you do, and thank you for joining us today. And we invite you to give us some remarks on the food system in our county and what the effects are of the SNAP benefit cuts and reductions that we've been facing, as well as the crisis caused by the reduction of, or the mass firing of federal workers beginning in January.
Sorry for the technical malfunction. Good morning, everyone. As shared, I'm Heather Raskin. I'm the director of the Montgomery County Office of Food Systems Resilience. Tremendous thanks to Congressman Raskin and his incredible team for not only convening this conversation this morning, but more importantly for your and Congresswoman Delaney's dedicated service to our communities. I know that it inspires all of us, and it is a tremendous honor to get to be with both of you today. I have to admit I struggled a little bit with deciding what to talk about this morning, not only because it's a little intimidating, speaking in front of some of modern history's most celebrated orators, but also because in a time when there isn't universal agreement that making sure that every child has enough to eat, there are no words. And yet, I know that when we work in public policy and in systems change, we're used to ebbs and flows of resources and services. And we are definitely in an ebb right now, but it reminds us that we need to take stock not only of the challenges that we're facing, but also of the silver linings along the way and the resources that we have at our disposal to address those issues. And so, as already been shared, we're in the middle of a perfect storm of food access crises, unlike anything we have seen in our lifetime. We have furloughed workers that have now missed multiple paychecks. The end of deferred resignation payments in September. There's thousands that we can't count who've lost income due to cutbacks in discretionary spending. As has been mentioned, 68,000 SNAP participants starting just this week will not have the benefits on their card when they go to the grocery store, even though there was progress made yesterday that there will be additional resources and much appreciation to our governor for closing some of those gaps here in Maryland. But we will still see probably a week delayed payment, and a week without the resources that you need to go grocery shopping for your family is a really significant amount of time. We also have asylees and refugees who, as of November 1st, are no longer eligible to participate in SNAP. There are work requirements for older adults and families with children. There are 46 SNAP education locations, SNAP Ed program locations in Montgomery County where families will no longer get access to nutrition education, smart shopping techniques, healthy cooking, and we have SNAP outreach organizations that have been cut by tens of thousands of dollars in the important work that they do for helping those who still are eligible for benefits to maximize those supports. Those are the immediate challenges. I think that's a very concerning list, to say the least. But we also are looking at long-term impacts that are to our states for massive costs to administer the SNAP program, as well as we will have a reduction in the value of benefits that families will be receiving. So all of that said, there's a lot in our community to be proud of, and in Montgomery County, we've been laying the foundations for critical work, not just programs and policies, but also the safety net is an interconnected web of people and organizations that collaborate together to strengthen our community in times of challenge just like this. And so over the past 10 years, we've not just been investing in those programs, but also in building on our lessons learned from the pandemic to create an office, and tremendous appreciation to our county executive for creating the Office of Food Systems Resilience, recognizing that food is not just its own unique issue area, but also an area of tremendous opportunity, but we need to bring strategy and systems-based thinking to the way that we approach food issues.
As a member of the Agriculture Committee.
So thank you, Jamie, and Congressman Raskin, you are truly a leader and always stepping forward in so many issues, but particularly uplifting this issue of food insecurity. And this is the third time I've been at Manna, and it's an incredible organization, but I mean, it's so important. And it's so unbelievable that we are able to live in the state of Maryland and in Montgomery County, because many counties across this country are not so fortunate. And we have an amazing county executive here who I know is going to give a lot of comments as well. But in essence, this is a self-inflicted harm. I am the only Marylander on the House Ag Committee. I am a farmer's daughter, and we saw this coming. You know, the Farm Bill has usually been a very bipartisan bill that comes together with SNAP and our typical farm bill issues in terms of a safety net for our farmers. And 3 or 4 months ago, when we started seeing all these cuts to SNAP and this tsunami of cuts across the board, including the RIFs, including all of the issues with Medicaid and so many other nonprofits, in addition to all of our agency cuts, we started seeing an increased need. But more importantly, we started seeing these cutbacks. We have 42 million people across this country that depend on SNAP. 1 in 9 families in my district depend on SNAP, half of them children, and obviously over 600,000 across the state. But I think what is so important is that uplifting this on a national basis in terms of how we can not only push back against SNAP cuts, but how do we meet the moment? Because I keep saying it's not make America great, it's make America break. Because we're starting to break a lot of our institutions and break our trust in our government. And it's so important that we step up at this time, and so Manna and so many of the food pantries are really incredible. I do have to, 50% of the SNAP has now been stated by the administration that they will step up. They have half a heart, maybe, to help feed some of these hungry families across America. But we are very blessed that our governor for the month of November has pledged $62 million to close the gap, and so that we will be feeding our hungry families. But that doesn't mean that in the long term, this food insecurity issue does not need to be addressed in our greater budget, which is one of the issues in terms of making lives harder and less affordable, and of course having an impact on our rural hospitals. It's a sad day when we have to go to court to make sure that our kids are fed. I will say that I am leading and joining with all of our Maryland congressional delegation to actually lead a letter to Secretary Rollins at USDA to ask that she reconsider and advocate to reverse some of these cuts and to, in fact, fully fund at the prior levels. I just want to also lift up, I have sat down with Heather many times at the Office of Food Resilience, and it is a very interconnected web within the state of, within this county, and there is really meeting the need. I was at Germantown at the Up County Hub as well, which supports 14,000 families with food and supplies, and we're seeing that a lot of our federal workers and government workers, as is Manna, are coming in. Many who used to be donors or volunteers are now clients. I did spend yesterday in Western Maryland in Hagerstown at the Community Action Council. They are not funded by any county dollars whatsoever or city dollars, and it's mostly philanthropy and block grants. and they are very focused on providing what they can, particularly without this new federal aid, as in Cumberland at the Western Maryland Food Bank. And Allegheny and Garrett are particularly having a hard time because of the lack of transportation and over 50% of their residents being over 55, and so not having the transportation and ability to get it. And then in Frederick at Fort Detrick, many of the government workers at the Fort Detrick Alliance, many of the government workers are coming in as well. But the good part is that we are stepping in. We're trying to cross leverage, and we are, with our government employees across this state, our 35,006th, I know, they are looking to us for leadership. And I'm hoping to work with Congressman Raskin to, talk on a county basis about ways to meet the need with lots of different stakeholders, including our private and for-profit partners. So I just want to, again, say my deepest gratitude to Manna, to all of you for stepping forward, to all of our elected leaders and Congressman Raskin. And I just want to fight to end this shutdown, but to also make sure that we fight against these cuts, because our children deserve to have the health and well-being and to be fed, particularly right before Thanksgiving. So thank you.
Thoroughgoing assault on our food ecosystem that we're experiencing now. The farmers have been very hard hit by the tariffs and the trade war that ensued, as well as the failure of Congress to engage in meaningful immigration reform. There have been the terrible raids in farm country of undocumenteds, and then they don't come to work, and at that point the farms have to pay the citizens who are working time and a half overtime or double overtime, or the harvest just doesn't go attended, and that's driving up prices more at the supermarket while the administration is pulling the plug on SNAP benefits, and we have to go to court to fight for the SNAP benefits. So we're trying to defend an entire ecosystem here, and it's not just the ability of families to go and buy groceries, but it's also those groceries themselves, the store's ability to survive in rural areas. A lot of the smaller stores are going to be severely hit if people can't go and spend their SNAP benefits. We've been joined by our county executive, Mark Elrich, who's been on the front lines of helping us address this crisis. And Mark, I thought you could say a few words and provide a belated welcome to us here.
So thank you very much. I was actually at a ceremony in the council chamber. This is Remembrance Month, and it's Remembrance and Reconciliation. And this is really important to us, and I felt that's another place where it's important to talk about what's happening in the world. I'm going to first of all say good morning to everybody for being here, and thank Manna Center for hosting us. You've been a reliable partner for a very, very long time. I knew you from back when I was on the council, and I knew what it like to work with you and how much work you did in the community. And Jamie, I got to thank you. As always, you're absolutely committed to this. I've said, if I want somebody who knows the law, I want you there in Congress. I mean, you can figure out legally what they're doing wrong. They don't seem to care, which is the frightening part. But at least we know they're wrong. And Congresswoman Delaney, thank you so much for being here. Seeing you, I think, is important for residents because people want to see what people are doing and to know that everybody's engaged in what we're facing. These cuts, the SNAP is particularly devastating. I am so happy that the court forced them to pay half of it and that the Governor Moore came up with the other half. But I just want to remind everybody that every time when the governor plugs a $62 million hole, unless he's going to be reimbursed, that's a $62 million hole in the next budget. That is $62 million that's not going to be available for things that we're going to need. The county got out of the last budget session in reasonably good shape. We actually got a reimbursement from the federal government that we weren't expecting for $42 million, which was a good thing. But we're trying to hold to our money because we're not sure what happens as the firings unfold. If they fire 20,000 federal workers who live in Montgomery County, that's 20,000 non-taxable earners will no longer be earners, and that's going to have serious implications. If our workforce is decimated, which I'm sure he plans on doing, there are going to be a lot of stores that close. There's going to be a lot of construction sites that shut down. All those have ripple economic effects. So this moment is bad, and it's like kind of an unexpected bad surprise, but we were already prepared, unfortunately, for a lot worse. And we're just worried whether the worst is going to be so much that it's going to wind up taking away from things that we normally would do. And we don't see any hope of relief from the Republican administration in this. I am so glad they did not appeal the decision of the court and that they're actually accepting it. But we've got 68,000 of our residents who receive SNAP benefits. More than 29,000 are children. And SNAP benefits mean food on the table. And to the food resilience work we do, we kept our hubs intact after COVID. The first one sprung up spontaneously, and then we realized they made sense. And what they really did for us is they had deeper reach in the community than the county government did. To a lot of communities, if you say, I'm from the government, I'm here to help, for people who fled governments from all over the world come here, they don't necessarily put those words together, government and help. The community groups we put together to organize these hubs, actually they self-assembled. They actually became a model. And so after COVID was over, we decided to retain the hub structure because it gave us much closer ties into the community. Now you have multiple places to distribute from who can help do this work. So something good came out of COVID, which was a horrible experience, but at least it helped us think better about how we do work in the community and how we can benefit from our partners. So I think we all understand what this is going to mean for people. Food that's not going to be on the table has a dire effect, particularly on children. As a former school teacher who saw kids come to school hungry, if you're hungry in school, you're not learning. You're not focused. You're in pain. You don't really, to be a teacher and stand in front of a room and see a kid crying and find out the kid's crying because he hasn't eaten since Friday, those are the kind of problems that are real and experiences that we have in our schools today. And all of this is just going to make this worse. So I applaud you. I won't even say encourage you, because you don't need encouragement. You're doing everything you two can possibly do to try to roll this back. And I have no doubt you'll continue to do that. And we're going to do everything we can do here to make sure we can provide as much support as possible, because to the extent we can alleviate the pain and suffering that people are going to experience, we need to do it. It's going to be real and tangible.
Well, thank you, County Executive Mark Elrich. For America's now, we've got the Trump administration, which is waging a full-blown assault against the food systems of the country, against the farmers with the tariffs, against the SNAP program, against the federal workforce. But fortunately, we've got tremendous resiliency in the community and in the structures that we've built up through COVID, and generally through the commitment of this county to make sure that everybody's going to be included and everybody is going to be well taken care of. I get to introduce now my friend Craig Rice, who is the CEO of Manna. His office is not in this building, but it's over at Columbia Pike, because there's different installations of Manna throughout our county. And Craig has had an extremely distinguished career, both in philanthropy and in public service and government. He spent time as, I think you were the Vice President of Ronald McDonald House before coming to Manna, but he spent 12 years as a member of the Montgomery County Council, was president of the Montgomery County Council, and of course also served in Annapolis in the General Assembly. And he's working every day to get us through this crisis. So thank you, Craig, and please, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Congressman Raskin, Congressman Delaney, County Executive Elrich, my good partners from Clifton, as well as from Tacoma Silver Spring Co-op. This is a tough time. And the reason why this is a tough time is because we are living in contradictions. The contradictions are when you hear make America healthy again. And we know that being healthy is attached to being able to have access to healthy foods and to healthcare. And so when you cut the cord of those things, I'm not sure how we can get to that place when we don't have that access, when we don't have the resources that so many people in our community need. It is confusing to me to say that we care about our children and our outcomes and care about education and want people to pull themselves up by the bootstraps, but we deny them access to the very things that can get them there. We continue to put more stumbling blocks in front of families than lifting them up to a place of self-sufficiency. What we see that's happening here at Manna and the people that are coming to us is saddening. And it's saddening because we had a woman who actually had seen us years ago and had achieved the dream of self-sufficiency. She no longer needed Manna services. But because the administration decided to close USAID, she lost her job. She was not a USAID employee. She cleaned the building. And of course that contract was lost. And when that contract was lost, she not only lost her full-time job, but also health benefits for her and her family and her children. We had a woman who came to our pantry just yesterday who lost her husband 3 months ago, who was working 2 part-time jobs to take care of her 3 children. And because the economy is so tough, she's actually had her hours reduced at both of those jobs and now presented asking for emergency food at Manna. I want to make sure that people understand that the people we serve are hard-working Americans, people who want to make a go and who want to try to achieve what is the American dream. And it seems as though we continue to put stumbling blocks in front of those people who don't want a handout, who never asked for a hand up. They just wanted a fair chance. And that's the reality of who it is that we see and the challenges that we're facing. We will always, as we heard from my good friend, Director Raskin, we will always see people who unfortunately, because of a loss of a loved one or something else, may end up coming to our doors for emergency assistance. But when you couple it with what we see as systemic in terms of growth, in terms of who it is that we're seeing, it makes it untenable for us as a food system to react. Before I pass the mic, I just want to say a shout out and thank you to our partners. Our partners in this community have come together under the guise and leadership of the Office of Food System Resilience, and really making sure that we work collectively and cohesively. For a long time, we in the food system space have operated in silos and understand we cannot do that any longer. It is not effective, nor is it not supportive for the individuals. I say that because it's really important for folks to understand that we are looking at every single dollar and maximizing its reach to make sure that we can support as many people as possible. The precious dollars that were given to us by the Montgomery County government, by our state, and that our federal partners still continue to work and fight for, we want to make sure that we're good stewards of that. And so that means not just providing people a meal, but also linking them with other services that we know will get them on the track of self-sufficiency. This is not a handout program. SNAP is not about handouts. SNAP is about making sure that we can get people through some of the toughest times that they will ever face in their life and get them back on track. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing shameful about that. In fact, it is those people's very own tax dollars that go to support these programs. So what I do think is shameful is for folks having to fight for the very dollars that they contributed to this program, to those reserves that are supposed to be there for them. They're the ones that contributed to this. It wasn't some magic fund that was created that came out of the sky. These are these people's tax dollars that are there for a reason, to help to support them when it's a difficult time. And this is a difficult time. I won't espouse as to who's right or who's wrong when it comes to fighting in Congress, but what I will say is this: what is wrong is not being there for people who need basic services. That is wrong, and we will continue to step up and fight to do our part while that debate continues.
Thank you, Craig Rice, for those powerful remarks. You know, solidarity and mutual aid are the watchword of the moment that we're in. And over the weekend, I was at one of your sister organizations' food distribution drive to federal workers, which is So What Else? We were in Rockville. I was meeting lots of federal workers who were sounding apologetic, saying basically, I wish I could be distributing food and contributing rather than calling on it. I've given lots before. It's such a common refrain to hear during these times. But your point is so powerful, Craig. There's nothing shameful about being fired by the Trump administration. There's something shameful about the Trump administration firing thousands of our workers, FAA, air traffic controllers, and NIH cancer researchers, and FDA and Department of Agriculture, Food and Drug inspectors. Yeah, that's shameful that they're waging war on our own government. It's not shameful to be on the other end of it, and it's the honor of our community to be able to stand up for everybody and to make sure that people understand sometimes you're giving and sometimes you're taking, and we all have to do both. So thank you for that point. I know that they're having great Gatsby parties down at Mar-a-Lago while they're happy to be slashing SNAP benefits across the country. And what these great groups are doing here is the exact opposite of that. So here's another person I want to introduce you to, Randy Drury, who's the outreach coordinator and the service consolidation hub coordinator of the Clifton Park Baptist Church, which plays such a great role here. And she's been deeply committed to addressing community needs, has organized countless food drives, global mission trips, vaccine clinics, yes, vaccination, and partnerships to promote food security, health, and access to essential resources throughout our community. She's the founder of Green Seeds, a not-for-profit dedicated to building sustainable food systems through aeroponic gardening and community collaboration. And I've gotten to tour to see some of her aeroponics, and so she's right on the cutting edge of meeting the needs of the community. Please welcome Randy Drury.
Hi everyone, thank you for just letting me be at this table. It is quite an honor. And thank you for even just having the hubs, that they were created originally and that they're still here because they are very much needed. So Clifton Park Baptist Church, we focus on food distribution, we do diapers, clothing distribution. We have a lot of great partners in the community that are focused on case management, SNAP applications, WIC applications, help connect people with employment and those type of things. So we focus on skills building and health. Those are our kind of spaces so that people can get to a point where they are self-sufficient. Our hope is that our numbers go down is what we should be celebrating. So we do English classes, entrepreneurship classes, sewing classes, and things like that. And then health is really important to us. So we actually grow some of our own food, as you heard, and that's really important for us because we know that the people who walk through our doors, if they're food insecure, they're likely nutrition insecure, and they likely have lots of other issues that might not be familiar with at that moment. But if we are providing them with healthy, fresh food, at least they're walking out our doors a little bit better. Not only are they hopefully getting a friendly face and a smile and maybe even a hug or whatever, but that they are leaving better off because they did walk through our doors. So we are growing. We have about 40 aeroponic towers, which translates to about 1,300 food growing plants, which is pretty exciting for us. We do have an outdoor traditional garden. We just received an amazing donation of a shipping container that's been converted into a hydroponic farm. We did get a bond bill through Delegate Lord Charconian, and those funds will go to put a solar onto it, so it will be off the grid in that aspect, and do some refurbishing. And once that's up and running, that will have almost 8,000 food growing plants in it. So this is our kind of way of trying to be a little sustainable in the unknowns, because we assume some of these might trickle down to us. We're hoping that they don't, but here we are. Serve people once a week. You could come, get your food once a week. Then we got tapped out because we ran out of food. So now we tell people you come every other week. And so now we're, looking around, what are we gonna do next? Every 3 weeks? How complicated is that gonna get for people and schedules and this and that? And we hear these stories too. Like, everyone has a story. Every single person that walks through our doors has a story. They're not just coming to, ooh, free food, where's it at? People are, don't butt in line. There's the food scarcity mindset is deep, and it's not going to get any better right now. So we're just trying to figure out. We're looking at our budget, just trying to think ahead and try to, how are we going to, come up with some things in the future, and that's part of our kind of growing aspects, is trying to have a little tiny slice of sustainability. We're working with a local high school to try to get another bond bill to get a shipping container on their location, and their students would do an after-school program there. Half of this food could stay at the school, and then the other half would come to us. So we have a well-rounded program. The students are, connected to food insecurity and other ways of growing, and so we're trying things, but it's that number is a lot higher than I think we're capable of going right now, to be honest.
Randy, thank you for everything you do, and thank you for telling us about the situation out there, which is turning grim in a lot of places. All right, our final speaker today is Mike Houston, who is the general manager of the Tacoma Park Silver Spring Food Co-op, my home away from home. Before that, he was the store manager in Dawson's in Rockville, another one of my favorites that made the best smoothie in the Maryland's beautiful 8th District. Unfortunately, Dawson's closed. But he's gotten all kinds of awards for his various stores for his commitment to environmental and sustainable practices and his commitment to feeding people. We wanted Mike to talk about what the effects of these SNAP benefit cuts are on local retailers as well as the people who use the SNAP benefits.
Sure. Thank you so much, Representative Raskin, for putting this together, Representative Delaney. Thank you to Manna for hosting us. As a grocer, I feel right at home with pallets and pallet jacks and hand trucks moving in the background, so I love that. And thank you for County Executive Elrich for being here as well. From a retailer's perspective, SNAP is a tremendous program. The same time that we get the credit card settlement in our bank account, the next day we get those SNAP funds. We are not waiting on reimbursement. We are able to, pay the farmers that we buy from, pay the local businesses that we buy from. At the co-op, we have over 200 local vendors, local producers, local farmers that we buy from. We get those trucks every single day, and it is critical that we are, getting those funds. We have already seen, notwithstanding the current situation, already since January, we've seen a 10% reduction in SNAP sales compared to previous years, and that is, people that are eligible for SNAP that are scared to enroll, that have fallen off the rolls, and so that is pushing people from the dignity and choice of going into a grocery store and being able to select exactly what they want in the quantities that they want, in the quality that they want, and pushing them, to go to our food assistance providers. And as Randy talked about, as Craig talked about, stretching that. So it is, SNAP is a critical program. There are retailers, in our area, in DC and Maryland, that have over 50% of their sales to SNAP users. And this week, Some of them were cutting back on their purchases. Those sales will never be made up. And as many people know, grocery runs on very thin margins. So, losing, 5% of sales even, can take you from just eking out a small amount of profit on the year to being unprofitable. And so, these programs are incredibly critical. They're a lifeline for people that need them, but they're also really important to our local business economy, and it's a force multiplier. Again, that money coming through our grocery stores is going out, is paying our workforce. We have a unionized workforce at the co-op. We're very proud of that. And going down to those local businesses and local farmers. It is very thankful that hopefully people are going to receive those SNAP allocations. But just the uncertainty leading up to this, retailers, we at the co-op, have spent time trying to stand up a program to get donations from folks so that we have gift cards prepared for people that ran out of their SNAP allocations. It's the right thing to do, but it takes time and resources and creativity versus a program that was already working, where people, had their SNAP cards reloaded automatically and were able to go to the grocery store and choose what they wanted to get. So, very much hope that we can get past this. But it's just such an important program.
Mike, thank you for what you do and for being here. And you, along with other panelists, have underscored that this is a delicate ecosystem, the food sector, and we don't want the same bulldozer that smashed the White House to smash our food system in America. And we're doing everything we can in Congress, April and I, to stop this. But it's the groups here on the ground that are going to make sure that nobody goes hungry in Montgomery County. All right, the floor is open for questions from all the media that have assembled, and you can address it to a specific person or everybody or nobody, as the case may be. Yeah.
Can you give a little more detail as to what the disruption in SNAP benefit looks like today? My understanding is that this is the first day in which SNAP benefits is completely renewed, but you said that there's going to be about a week-long break. Is that just from Montgomery? Is that from the state? How do you connect what's going on there?
Heather, if you take that.
Yes, so it takes a while to load the value of the benefits onto the cards themselves, and so there are a couple of vendors that do that, and the really should have happened a couple of weeks ago, and so the USDA had told states that they could not transmit the value of the benefits that were for November benefits, and so so that whole system is basically a few weeks delayed. There's also I think an assumption that SNAP benefits hit everybody's account on November 1st. The reality is it starts usually at least in Maryland on November 4th, and alphabetically by name is when they hit people's accounts. So theoretically, even if everything goes really quickly, they still have a lot of administrative processes to undertake. So it probably will be about a week, and that's not just in Maryland, that's nationally. It's administered a little bit differently in each state, but it does mean that it's probably going to be at least a week before those benefits hit. And if you think about how that works in practice, it doesn't necessarily mean those families are going to get an email that says, okay, right now that money is on your account. And so they will have to be living in that limbo and carefully checking, and and I think that uncertainty just adds to the stress. And that's assuming that they have been closely following news and know what's happening on a day-to-day basis.
So there's a likelihood that some people may not know if they get to the register.
Right, and that's a story that we regularly hear, is that families go, they do their shopping, they show up at the register, they hand over their card, works just like a credit card, but the money isn't there. And so they're at the checkout with their families and have to be turned away. And so we've seen a lot of retailers and others who are stepping in to try to close those gaps. That's part of what we're doing at the farmers market. But the reality is, it's $12 million a month in Montgomery County alone. There are no amount of gift cards that are able to close that gap.
It's really important, and as we sit in our warehouse where we have a large number of volunteers, people mobilizing together is incredibly important to help us during this incredibly difficult time. We rely a lot on our government partners, but the reality is so much comes outside from individual donors, those who volunteer, giving their time, their talent, their treasure. All of those are kinds of ways in which they can step up. There are lots of people who want to do food raisers, who want to donate food. I just want to remind folks that it's better for you to donate to your food bank the same money that you would spend. We can leverage those dollars farther. When you go and purchase from a retailer, you're paying a certain price that we can pay a lot less for those same goods. And so you get a bigger bang for your buck when you actually donate to your local food bank. So that's incredibly important for us, as all of us are looking at increasing our service to the community. You heard Clifton going up to 5,000. Manna will be serving 6,000 families a month. That is staggering. It's the most we've ever served in the 43 years of Manna's existence. And so it really is something to say about the need that's there. So for all folks that are in the community, we're just asking you to step up in whatever way you can to help support your fellow neighbors.
Terrific.
I would say a lot of the counties across, I know the 6th, I know Montgomery County, and I think both Congressman Raskin and I both also on our websites, and we put out information and books about where you can volunteer, where you can donate, and also if you need to access those services, where to go. And so I definitely encourage people to look at those.
Yes, please.
We've talked about this is a huge issue, and we've talked about some administration cuts. Today, Governor Westmore announcing a commission to start redistricting. I'm wondering if either rep you guys have a comment on that or anything about the redistricting commission here in Maryland.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to take us too far off topic, but I think the governor's got the right idea, and I think we'll see in California today in the election where voters stand on this with Prop 50, and I think that will be an important signal to the people of Maryland and across the country.
I think that's right.
We've been fighting for more than a decade, ever since I've been in Congress, to have reform of the redistricting process. My former colleague John Sarbanes really made this the centerpiece of his career. If you look at the For the People Act, which Democratic majorities passed in the House in the 116th and 117th Congresses, we made this the very first plank that we would abolish all partisan redistricting across the country and replace it with independent redistricting panels. Unfortunately, we did not get a single Republican member supporting us on that, and we had all of the Democrats on our side. So they plunged us into this race to the bottom, but I just don't think there's anything ethical about unilaterally disarming before people who want to attempt an authoritarian takeover of our government in order to accomplish policies like destroying the SNAP program and taking away people's Medicaid coverage and the tax credits that enable them to pay for their health insurance every month.